What is the purpose of a course in property law, and how does it differ from the law of contract and tort? And we have some simple and quite possibly correct possibilities. One, maybe it's just the law of stuff and who has it. Maybe it's just a bunch of doctrines grouped together that are loosely tied to land and things that happen to come up a lot and can't all be fit into the other classes of contract law or tort law. On this argument, the law of finders, the law of zoning, the law of land transactions, landlord-tenant law, and so on don't necessarily hang together all so neatly, but they're all loosely tied to land and things, and they have to go somewhere, and there it is in property law. And this idea of property law containing matter that doesn't easily fit into contract or tort law leads to a comparison between what you learn in a contract or tort class. And so if we want to engage in some simple or simplistic divisions, contract law is about rules and rights that are set by and concern agreements. Tort law is about rules and rights concerning interactions between people and that class of civil wrongs. And so on this view, maybe we can say property law is about rules and rights concerning interactions between people and things. But of course, as you probably know, property can be the subject of a contract, and torts may very well concern a person's property. But we have to make certain divisions, and maybe we can think of property as the common law legal interface between the individual and the environment, both natural and built. And maybe what holds things together is that in this area we see certain recurring concepts that we don't examine in a contract or tort class. For example, things like what does it mean to possess something? What does it mean to transfer something? What does it mean to have priority of rights over something? And some of these concepts that are developed for the physical world can also apply to intangible interests. Things like a future interest in land, something like an estate, so-called intellectual property, which is often grouped as part of property law, even though many of us would argue that it should not be. Regardless of whether we can draw clean conceptual lines, property doctrines are nonetheless foundational to the distribution, use, and regulation of wealth and power in society. In addition, it's also worth exploring the role of the property concept, putting property into scare quotes. The idea of property carries a good deal of rhetorical power. And this was always true. We can find quotes from Blackstone centuries ago saying there is nothing that so engages the affections of mankind as the right to property. Of course, the notion of property rights has always been important in the American political tradition, and property rights exercise a fair amount of rhetorical power today. And so it's worth thinking as you study property law whether or not there is a there. In other words, ask yourself what follows from calling something property. What work does the notion of property do in legal argument? And so there's a couple of possibilities here. We might think of the idea of property as just being a conclusion. For example, because I have the right to fill in the blank, sell something, exclude something, use something, this thing is my property. Alternatively, we can think of property as a premise that leads to certain legal conclusions. For example, this is my property. Having property comes with certain rights, and therefore I have the right to do various things. Keep you off my land, use my land, sell my land, transfer my land. And it's worth thinking about when exactly do these premises take hold. Most notably, the question of whether or not property rights are solely a creature of law, or maybe property interests in some way predate the state, or exist without the existence of a state and an independent body of law. So that's another kind of question that is worth exploring as you study property law. And of course, there's a number of underlying questions, some of which will be explored in the videos to come. For example, what does it mean to own property? What can be property? How do we allocate property? Why do we have a property system in the first place? And what do we hope to get out of it?